I'm sure everybody knows that old saying, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. So what I'm thinking is I could come out and teach you how to identify a certain mushroom, but if I were to teach you how to learn how to identify mushrooms, then you'd be even that much further ahead. So give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Teach a man to teach himself how to fish, and he'll be that much further off. Because when I was growing up, I didn't have nobody to teach me how to do anything. I had to figure it all out for myself. And it was a rough go doing it that way, but it taught me how to teach myself, and I think that's more important than simply being able to fish. You know what I'm saying? Give you guys a shot of my surroundings. This is a young oak woods, and there's a lot of understory shrubs like witch hazel and other things. You know, as with most things in nature, there's always poisonous lookalikes, especially when it comes to Lactarius. There are poisonous Lactarius that can really mess you up, and there are lookalike mushrooms to the chanterelle that can mess you up as well. But if you pay attention to the features and you ID it 100% with every single feature in your identification field guide, you shouldn't have any problems. Just one of the many things you find when you're out hunting mushrooms in the summer. These are Indian pipes, and what this is it's actually a plant, and I believe this here is the flower, but it lacks chlorophyll, so it doesn't have any green coloration to it, and it gets that from the plants around it. But I figured I'd just show that. It's kind of an indicator of a decent mushroom hunting woods. One thing that's important when you're learning to hunt mushrooms and to identify them is you want to find mushrooms that are mature but not overly mature, because that's how they're described in the books typically. Like in the case of this one. Now here's another Lactarius mushroom. It's got that funnel shape, but it's so big and old that it really wouldn't be a good candidate for identification, because it looks white, but it could just be faded out from the sun and stuff. So I wouldn't even bother trying to identify that one. I don't like ripping these mushrooms out if I can help it, because this is the fruit actually. The actual mushroom organism is in the ground, and it usually appears like little white roots or white mold, and these are the fruits of that organism. And those are some really nice common or golden chanterelles, and these appear to be quite bug free. Not very big, but they usually don't get very big around here. I'm in macro mode, and what I want to show you with this is the cap. See those lines? That's an important identification characteristic. So whenever you're out hunting mushrooms, you want to look at all these different features. You really just want to almost be like a little kid in a way, inquisitive and curious, and look at every little detail. How does the mushroom attach to the cap? See that stem popped right off of the cap, and there's like a little indentation in there where the stem was. And see how this falls apart easy on the outside edge. The color of the gills, the color of the cap. See how it has rings of coloration? That could be an important identification feature. Now, since I don't know what this mushroom is, if I wanted to take that home for identification purposes, I'd want to store it separately. from the edible mushrooms that I'm gathering, because it could be poisonous and I don't want to put them together. So what I'll do is I'll have, if I'm going out strictly for identification purposes, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take little brown paper bags, like the lunch bags, and I'll just put one type of mushroom in each bag, and then I'll go home and identify them. Alright, so that's where I came from. It's thicker, darker woods with a lot of understory shrubs and just a few lower level plants. Kind of dark. And now we're kind of getting into a transition where it starts to open up. It gets a lot lighter. There's a lot more younger sapling trees and a lot more ferns and stuff like that growing on the ground. And it just has a drier feel when I'm walking on it. So this is where I'm going to end my hunt. Now there could be other species of mushrooms that like this habitat, but not the ones that I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to head to another part of the woods that's more like this back here and continue my hunt, and that'll save me some time and get me onto the edible mushrooms quicker, just by knowing the habitat they grow in, the look, the feel. Here's another one hiding down in here, just getting started. Looks like it got ate by bugs too, though. A lot of people will come through though and they'll just tear these leaves away looking, and that's great if you're going through one time, but if you expect to go back to that area in the future and harvest more mushrooms, you want to do your best to avoid disturbing the leaf litter, because that's where the mycelium, those white roots, live, and you'll kill the mushroom off in time, and then you won't be able to find it there anymore. Now a lot of folks claim that's not true, but they don't really have any scientific basis for their argument. But to me, you know, common sense tells me if I were to go out in my garden and disturb the roots, there's a mushroom on your face on the camera lens there. But if I were to go out in my garden and constantly disturb the roots of the tomatoes and stuff I was growing, they wouldn't grow very good, because they'd constantly be fighting to reestablish those roots, and the roots would be getting dried out and stuff. So, you know, common sense tells me to leave the habitat that the mushrooms are growing in alone as much as possible and let them keep on growing. I know it's like beating a dead horse, but every time I do a mushroom hunting video, I can't help but think about it. You know, there's a lot of people that claim that mushrooms have no nutritional value, so why bother learning to identify them? But if you do your research, dry pound for dry pound, mushrooms have a lot of nutrients that your body needs, just like anything else, just as much as any other food, really. The real argument is that mushrooms are up to 90% water, but the human body is 70% water, so that's not too much of an argument for me. I don't really care one way or the other. I just like getting out and hunting them, and I like eating them. They're good to eat, they're good for you, and they're a nice addition to a meal. But we got 1, 2, couple Lactarius, and looks like about a dozen or so chanterelles, cinnabars, and golden. So that's it. I'll give you guys an idea of how long it took me to find those. This whole video, making the video and everything, was probably about a half an hour. But if I wasn't doing the video, I probably would have found these in about 15 minutes in about a 100-yard stretch of woods. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all the comments and support.